I'm going to riff a little on Charlottesville, the anniversary of the Charlottesville event, the Charlottesville debacle, the Unite the Right rally that was supposed to take place in Charlottesville in front of the statue of Robert E. Lee, which was supposed to take place on August the 12th, 2017, which turned into a grotesque and brazen miscarriage of justice, an abridgment of free speech, and worse, the purposeful fomenting of a riot and of hostilities and of the purposeful putting people in danger of bodily harm by the powers that be, which is how it all unfolded. That's basically what happened that day. It was an atrocity on every level. It was a miscarriage of justice. It was a terrible day. And I was there, and I have a special reason to talk about it. By the way, I recently assembled all of my essays and all the essays that I wrote when I was first starting my Substack page. I decided to write about Charlottesville and do it in episodic form. And I put all of those essays together and recently published them. I published them as a Kindle document, but I also just published them on my Substack page. So, in proper order. So it's a longish article. It's something like 10,000 words because it's all these other articles put together to form the story of my experiences of Charlottesville and what happened there. And I think that Charlottesville is really the reason why I started doing stuff on YouTube. I really wasn't. I had a YouTube channel before that, and I had recorded a couple things on YouTube before Charlottesville, but I'd never really felt like doing very much with it. I had, prior to that, been on SoundCloud. I'd done a few SoundCloud podcasts, and I'd been on some podcasts with some other people. Of course, we did the podcast in the old alternativeright.com days with Spencer and Liddell. But YouTube I didn't really know what to do with or feel like doing very much with until I decided to take the trip to Charlottesville as an independent reporter, if you will, as somebody who was just going to go take in the sights and talk to people and more or less record how things would go down. And I had no idea what it would become. No clue that it would become this huge event, and that it would be such a horror show, such a disaster, on so many different levels. No idea of any of that. I thought this will probably be an interesting event. It'll probably be dicey. There'll probably be some Antifa there. The Antifa are always up to no good. I've seen enough of them already to know that. But I didn't think that the event wasn't going to happen. I didn't think that they would be so brazen that the state authorities would be so brazen as to let everybody in to this place, to this park area, and do absolutely nothing while the Antifa attacked with impunity, launching bottles and projectiles of various kinds at people who were there for the event, and attacking, violently at will. I didn't think that was, while the police just stood by and did nothing, I didn't think that was going to happen. And I also didn't think that they would actually march in with their goon squad gear. They would have their Virginia State Riot Police come in and declare the event, declare the gathering to be unlawful, and ask us to disperse, and then have the cops on the scene do absolutely nothing. The cops did nothing that day. The cops did nothing. The Antifa attacked at will. Sometimes the event goers, to defend themselves, fought back, and afterwards, of course, those cases were prosecuted. It was a total scam. The attackers, the hostile party, the ones who should have been taken to task for their violent behavior, were somehow cast as heroes, even by useless, so-called conservatives like Mitt Romney and others. And the event goers were vilified, and as I wrote recently, it was a dispiriting thing, because, but also eye-opening. That's the bright side of it. That's the plus side of it, is you learn not to trust any of the institutions that are supposed to be there to uphold freedom and uphold the right to freedom of speech, uphold the principles that are supposedly, that the country of the United States of America is supposedly founded on. You realize that none of those institutions care, and they're all corrupted, and the news media will just as soon tell a 180-degree lie about what happened, if it suits the quote-unquote narrative that they want to get out there. So yeah, it was eye-opening in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, I no longer have the video of those days, because that was on my old channel, which eventually accrued 3 strikes with on the stupidest of pretexts that YouTube possibly could have to offer. You see why my backup channel is called YouTube is My Whore. That's my attitude towards YouTube right now. They've gone a little easy. They've gone a little easier on the extreme censorship lately, but they're still pretty useless. And I have no regard for them at all. But that was the after experiencing what I did at Charlottesville, just going as an observer, and not partisan, not especially partisan, although I was sympathetic to the event goers. I was sympathetic to the idea of not erasing Southern heritage. I was sympathetic to the idea of keeping statues of great Southern leaders, keeping them there, not just tearing them down in the name of wokery or whatever the hell it's supposed to be. Um, I certainly, had I wasn't an impartial observer, but I was not there as a speaker. I was not there, as somebody who was representing the event in any way. By that time, I had sort of faded into the background of what the alt-right had become. Um, I'd lost touch. I'd been out of touch with Richard Spencer for a while. And there were new people, like it was sort of the movement of the alt-right movement had morphed a little by that time. So I was, I was not. I mean, I think I was still a known commodity. I was still targeted by the ADL in their hit piece, and targeted by the SPLC in their hit piece, but I wasn't the most prominent by any stretch of people. But I was still there just because I was interested. I was interested to see what would fall out, what would happen. I was interested to see what people would say, and then what happened. And you can read about it, by the way. Again, you can read it on Kindle. It's called The Truth About Charlottesville. You can read it on Kindle for $1.50, or you can read it for free on my Substack page. But I wanted to just, since we're coming close to the anniversary, the 8-year anniversary of the event, I just felt like weighing in, giving my thoughts on it. The Charlottesville event was like the warm-up to January 6th in a lot of ways. It was as probably as many feds present. It was something that was intended as an ambush. It was, there are similarities and there are differences, but I think of what happened on January 6th and how it was represented, the erroneous way that it was represented, the disingenuous way that it was represented by the Lion media. And they say that the media is the enemy of the people. I'd say the media, the mainstream media, the legacy media, are the enemies of the truth. And that was where, something else that got corrected, a way in which I ceased to be naive on that day. I guess I thought before that I still had some faith in the idea that there were people in the mainstream news media. I knew they were liberal, but I still had faith that they would tell the truth about things. You can have a bias. It's really not so big a deal to have a bias, a liberal bias or a conservative bias or whatever. You can have a bias and still tell the truth, and still be honest. There's no reason why your biases should prevent you from telling the truth about what you see. And so that's why I'm not really so. I don't really care as much when people talk about the liberal bias of the media or left-wing bias of the media. It's not so much that they have a bias; it's that they're dishonest, and that's what you saw. That's what you saw with the coverage of Charlottesville, the way that it was covered, the things they said about it. It was 180 degrees away from the truth. And a young man, who was in fear of his life, who was being chased down by thugs, baseball bat wielding thugs, who were chasing after him in his car. James Fields, I think is his name. Because he backed up and backed into someone and when he was fearing for his life, and that person died, unfortunately, whether because she got hit by the car or because of a heart attack, because she was obese or whatever. It doesn't, I'm not concerned with those details. I'm not saying it's a good thing that she died, but obviously it was not. Obviously, this is not something that should be. This is not a man who should be sitting in prison, federal prison, for the rest of his life. Obviously, it's not first-degree murder. That they were able to construe it, that they were able to convince a jury that that's what it was, that that's what he did, is so disgusting. And who thinks about him now? As I say in my latest article on Substack, who mourns for James Fields Jr.? If that's his name, I think that's his name. Who mourns for the man? How old was he? Like 20? He was thrust into this situation. I don't know the good faith of the people who planned the event. They certainly wrecked a lot of people's lives by exposing them. These people who took part in the Tiki Torch rally, especially, who were photographed, and their photographs were shown everywhere, and then they were doxxed, and then they lost their jobs, and they were persona non grata. Couldn't Richard Spencer and the others have anticipated this and maybe done something to see to it that wouldn't happen? Just all around, it's nearly 8 years ago, but it's just disgusting from every which way, every which angle, every way you look at it. And yeah, but I got to face up against go up against these riot police, and of course there were many more of them, and they were more geared up than we were. So I got knocked on my ass and almost trampled, and then I got pepper sprayed in the face, and I was just I'd hit the deck. I was coughing. It was quite a dramatic event, but now 8 years later, I mean, I don't know. It's emblematic. It's emblematic. I don't want to be too optimistic. I don't want to be black pill, but I also don't want to be overly rosy in my take on things. It does seem like there's been much more exposure of just how dishonest they all are. One thing after another. Their coverage of one event after another. The coverage of 2020. The coverage of the Trump assassination attempt. Charlottesville, J6, everything. They are the enemy of the truth. They are what Pravda was to the Soviet Union. That's what the New York Times and the Washington Post and NPR and the BBC, that's what those institutions are to the Western world. There's no difference. whatever differences there are, whatever distinctions there are minor. Maybe it's not. Maybe these newspapers and news organs. Maybe CNN is not run by the state technically, the way that Pravda was, but it's still essentially controlled news. And I think people see that more and more. We know that more and more. But I don't trust, if I hear about an event taking place and I hear the news media say, this is how it all went down, like how they talked about the New York shooter. I haven't mentioned him here before, but how they talked about the guy in New York who supposedly was mad at the NFL, but then went up to the 33rd floor and shot a CEO of Blackstone, some woman who was an extremely powerful executive of Blackstone, who's up to all kinds of funny business, along with BlackRock. They're colluding to see to it that no one can afford to buy a home anywhere, and that you have to pay $2,000 to live in a closet, the way that things are going right now. But we're supposed to think, but he was just mad at the NFL, and because they found a note on him. And when the people reporting a story, I mean, it's fairly simple. It's like, think about somebody you do not trust, and that person, you can't trust this person because this person has a proclivity to lie about things, and this person has a certain agenda that he or she wants to accomplish, and so he's more prone to ignore certain things and to lie about other things to make them seem more friendly to whatever his agenda is. I mean, we all know people like that. This is kind of like when you hear people arguing about, conspiracy theories are so stupid. Well, look, two people getting together and plotting to do something, that's a conspiracy. That happens all the time. In a small scale sense, happens every single day. You have people colluding, getting together, deciding to to conspire on this or that. Nobody would argue with that, but why? But suddenly, when it gets to be powerful people, oh no, they would never conspire. Something that ordinary people, lower status people, mid-status people do all the time. But no, the top echelon of the power elite, they wouldn't do that. What a crazy idea! What a crazy notion that they would do. They would engage in the same kind of behavior that human beings engage on, on every level of society. That's what people who argue against, who say, well, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I'm too smart for that. That's what you sound like to me. You sound foolish. You sound like you're just the very thesis that the very presuppositions that you have ignore a fact about human nature. So in the same sense, we all know people who lie. We all know people who can't be trusted. We all know people who would exaggerate a story a certain way, or might tell a story, the very opposite. Something might happen, and they might tell you when they're reporting what happened to you, when they're giving you their version of events, they might tell you the very opposite of what the truth is. Same goes for the news media, right? It's just on a higher level. It's a more conspicuous level. And that's what happened at Charlottesville. They were not only dishonest, they were completely dishonest. They told an absolute bald-faced lie about the event, where the aggressors were the noble defenders of liberty, and the true noble defenders of liberties were painted as the aggressors. They just switched it around, and the police, did a great job. Well, no, they didn't do a great job. They didn't do a fucking thing. They stood down because they were clearly ordered to stand down, and they endangered lives. It's amazing that only one person died. It's amazing that for as many event goers who got hurt, who got attacked and sustained injuries. It's amazing that there weren't more injuries. It's perhaps a sign of grace that there weren't more injuries, that there weren't more deaths that happened that day. Anyway, that's my rant on Charlottesville. Take it for what it's worth, but please do read my article, whether you want to buy it for $1.50 on Kindle or just see it just read it on my Substack. I appreciate it. Appreciate your patronage. And that's it.